One person who saw the Dalai Lama said, you know, I didn't hear a word he said. What I heard was his giggle, was his laughter. That's what I saw. And that's what I heard. And that's what I took away, was his laughter. So this morning we're going to look at some of the ways that the Dalai Lama has suggested that we can cultivate our own inner laughter. So we have a giggle. Do you have a giggle? Do you have a giggle? The jewel in the heart of the lotus. Yes? And the lotus flower is a picture over there on our table, is often the symbol of spirituality, because it reminds us, like the lotus flower, many of you have heard me say, is that the roots are down below the muck, right? But they grow the most beautiful flowers. So it reminds us that we blossom not in spite of, but because of. There was once a schoolgirl who went to school, and her teacher said, I want everyone to take out a piece of paper and pencil and write down what you want to be when you grow up. The schoolgirl thought for a while, and she wrote, I want to be happy. Well, the teacher said, I don't think you understood the assignment. And she said, years later I thought, no, I don't think they understood life. Think about the question. What do you want to be when you grow up? She thought, be. I want to be happy. Oh, wrong answer. That's not something that we do, that's something that we be. So this innate impulse that opens our lotus flower, that opens our heart flower, that opens us to this mystery of the universe that speaks in silence, is really a being impulse that then informs our doing. The doing is second. The being is first. The Dalai Lama clearly said a million things we'd be here for a million years talking about, but I've kind of extracted 3 things from his writings that I believe he left us to point us toward how we cultivate this impulse that opens our heart in the same way that the lotus flower is opened. And the first one, he said, was train the mind. And in the Buddhist tradition, you often hear that. You have to train the mind. And the reason that we do mantra is a tool, and the repetition is called japa, is because we're training the mind to come back and to come back and to come back and to stop seeking the doingness out there and return to the beingness in here. And my teacher was talking about the whole field of neuroplasticity and how anthropologists as well as scientists are beginning to look at this whole field and really talking about how the brain is not this fixed, stagnant entity, that it really has a lot of plasticity. And so the example that she gave was, and that she had heard from the research, is like sledding. Remember when we all live in the Northeast, so we've all been sledding, right? Well, we cultivate certain ways of thinking. You know, we have those little mind tapes that run through, right? Do you guys have them? I mean, we all have them, and we all have them, and they sort of come and go based on our mood and how we're feeling and events, but we have those places that we return to. And so neuroplasticity relates that to the path in the snow that the sled makes. And what happens when you go on the same path for a long time? What happens? what happens? It gets impacted and embedded, and it's familiar. It may not even be fun, but it's familiar, and we know it, so we go down that same path. Well, neuroplasticity says you can pick up your sled and walk over here and put it down and create a whole new path. And this is exactly what the Dalai Lama was talking about choosing. You can choose one way or you can choose another way, but you can pick up your sled and create a whole new path. I think that's amazing. It's a kind of a different way of thinking about it that we can choose. Excuse me, I'm going sledding today on a whole new path. You won't find me on the old one. You can look for me there, but I won't be there. So our brains are not fixed. We have a choice in the path that we create. This is empowering. This is empowering. But anyway, the Dalai Lama said, when I get angry due to very small mistakes in other people, then I just express and then finish. But sometimes when it is more serious, a more serious form of anger, I try to separate myself from anger, then watch my anger, that emotion, then immediately the strength of the anger diminishes. According to my own experience. He always says that. And then, I love this, I also share with my friends in order to bring more calmness to my mind. Can you imagine the Dalai Lama sitting around in his own support group? Isn't that kind of a delightful image? It's a beautiful image. It's a beautiful image. And it reminds me what he's really talking about when he said, I notice it and then I finish it and it's gone. He also talks about going back to his mat to cultivate compassion. That anger sends him back to his own practice to cultivate compassion. And what happens when we sit on our mat and we go inward to those places? Then we contact what the Dalai Lama calls our true nature. Which is why the Dalai Lama said, when you peel all of the negative emotions away, all you're left with is spacious compassion, which he categorically believed was the essence of our true nature. Not even happy or sad or good or bad or all the polarities, but this spacious compassion. So, somewhere beyond the obstacles, and somewhere even beyond the bliss, needing or not wanting either one, we land in the center. And in the center is where compassion lives. And out of that compassion, we feel our connectedness to all things and all people. We get that we live in the heart of God, and so does everyone else. Now that's pretty woo-woo out there, right? Esoteric, live in the heart of God. Okay, I believe it, but that's big. So we're going to bring it down to something really concrete. I love this story. This is quoted by the man who wrote The Art of Happiness that went to see the Dalai Lama. And he was talking about all this stuff, compassion and oneness and all this stuff. And, it's really good. I've read this everywhere. It's all really good. And then he said, then all of a sudden I thought about my shirt. My shirt! And this is what he said. All of a sudden, in the middle of all this talk, I looked down and I had a stain on my shirt. And that made me start thinking about my shirt. And all of a sudden, I'm serious, and all of a sudden, I began to think about how many people were involved in making my shirt. I started by imagining the farmer who grew the cotton. Next, the salesperson who sold the farmer the tractor to plow the field. Then, for that matter, the hundreds or even thousands of people involved in manufacturing that tractor. And all the designers of the tractor. Then, of course, the people who processed the cotton, the people who wove the cloth, and the people who cut, dyed, and sewed the cloth, the cargo workers and truck drivers who delivered the shirt to the store, and the salesperson who sold the shirt to me. It occurred to me that virtually every aspect of my life came about as a result of others' efforts. My precious self-reliance was a complete illusion, a fantasy. As this realization dawned on me, I was overcome with a profound sense of our interconnectedness and interdependence on all beings. I felt a softening, something. I don't know. It made me want to cry. So when we train our mind, when we pick up our sled and make another pathway, we create opportunities to discover and feel our true nature. And when we feel our true nature, compassion softens us. And in that softening, I realize we're all in the heart of God. Not just in some esoteric way, but in very concrete ways. This is why the Buddhists talk about Sangha, community, how it's so important to have community, to hear, to listen, to support, to walk together.